just give me this much money. And I wouldn't have, and I probably didn't take the no way stand in the first 3 years of this company. But I think when you engage with that kind of behavior, you become a walking ATM machine for it. It's a slippery slope. How do you, if sometimes it's okay, then it's okay all the time. And so about 2 years, we reached the point in our life where we said that now we're big enough, we're strong enough, and we're confident enough that we should stand without being a walking ATM machine for the labor inspector or for anybody else who wants to trade unionists or anybody else who wants to take a swipe at us just because of what we're doing. We don't have to apologize for what we're doing. So about 2 years ago is, I would say, the turning point in TeamLease when we said we were done with the off-balance sheet settlement. That was, could we have survived the first 3 years? I'm not sure. I mean, I'm conflicted, because we only have been able to have this confidence once we reached a certain size.
Yeah. How do you cope with it? I mean, what does one do about it?
Corruption is a child of lack of transparency. It is a child of laws which are so subjective that they can't be enforced. I mean, you can't comply with 100% of India's labor laws without violating 20% of them. I have a notice from the Delhi government which says you cannot pay your employees by check because people don't have bank accounts. And I have another notice from the same Delhi government which says you better pay them, you can't pay them by cash because otherwise people steal it from them. To my mind, corruption in India is a child of the lack of transparency and our unwillingness to be realistic in what we legislate. When we're realistic, we are idealistic in our legislation.
Whatever else one can say about the West, and there are a lot of problems in the West, but certainly to do these small things of day-to-day life, which are such a challenge for us in India, and for the poor especially, you don't need to pay those bribes.
But it's not cultural. The corruption in India is a child of a state which is weak and overwhelming in our lives. It needs to be strong and smaller.
Yeah. No, and effective, actually.
Yes, effective.
What you need is a more effective. I agree with you. We need a reform of institutions, and the character will take care of itself.
But we have the challenges, the context of, see, the Indian mind is a little left of center. Balzac once said, behind every great fortune lies a great crime. It could very easily have been an Indian who said that. We have a differing attitude to wealth and those that possess it. In the past, a wealthy man usually was wealthy with dishonest means. In 1990, it was unclear that there was was there an honest entrepreneur? Was it possible to be honest entrepreneur in the license Raj?
Well, that's absolutely correct. But if you go back further, of course, the Vaishya, the merchant, was a very accepted and in many states an honored member of the society.
So you're saying the distrust of markets in India is relatively recent?
It came with the London School of Economics, this sort of suspicion of the businessman, the entrepreneur, and Nehru reinforced it in the early period. Now, if Gandhi had prevailed, I think Gandhi had a much more pragmatic view of the merchant class. And certainly if you read the old texts, they're stories of merchants. And many cases merchants give advice to Brahmins on how to behave. And so the merchant was a much higher, well regarded.
So where did this you can't do well and do good contradiction in the Indian mind come from?
Well, I think that's a kind of contradiction that's universal. I don't think that
it's not overwhelmingly Indian?
No, not at all. I think all societies have this feeling that if you want to be really successful, you cannot really be good. And what is important, though, is that the society comes to terms with the fact that actually there is not necessarily a contradiction. Ultimately, reputation catches up,
It's not a one innings game. You cannot reduce poverty, you cannot get education capacity up to handling 15 million people a year. You can't skill 6 million people a year unless you get free markets and democracy to work. One thing which I related a lot to your book also was that, you know, the difficulty of being good, but it needs all four things. As you grow older, you look for blended returns. You know, you look for financial returns, intellectual returns, impact returns, spiritual returns. And so I also, when you were talking about that question of when you know, Krishna says to Arjun, do selfless, don't look for the rewards, I thought I had two different responses. I thought one was Krishna was telling Arjun to be passionate, you know, be so involved and so busy with what you do that you don't give.
You forget yourself.
You forget yourself and forget. So you lose yourself in the passion that you're doing. And second is define rewards much more broadly. It's unclear to me, and I would be very interested in getting your perspective on whether, how would you get up in the morning if you had no desires?
Yeah.
So that means that
you have to manage, you have to manage desire, you have to manage your material life, you have to manage your moral life, and you have to manage your spiritual life.
But isn't capitalism or markets the best context? See, human beings are a bundle of contradictions, and so capitalism being a second best choice is the best fit for human beings reaching their aspirations, along with its, whether it's brother-in-arm or handmaiden or child of democracy.
Yeah.
You know, free markets.
Well, I think that's absolutely correct. That there is this notion, capitalism is hated around the world, and there's this notion that you can't be, capitalism cannot be moral. Yes. That morality comes from religion somehow. In all cultures, this is true. But in fact, we forget that actually in the capitalist model, you have very immediate signals given to you
yes.
for moral behavior. And capitalism is not something that we've imported from the West, which is what most people think. It started when the first agricultural surplus came 10,000 years ago. And so really what we have to understand is the moral underpinnings. That capitalism does have a underlying dharma. And it's
is that dharma in crisis right now because of the global crisis?
Well, what has happened, in fact, is that there's a failure in the financial market.
Yes, so people are confusing financial markets with free markets.
That's right. And what's happening is that in the microeconomy around the world, that there is no problem. You have enough competition, you get the right signals, and that is fine. But what is tragic is that the financial markets, where there was excess, those have impacted the real market.
Right.
I mean, I don't think this is a crisis of capitalism. What it is, in fact, is making us aware, one, that there are business cycles. This one was much bigger than we thought, but actually the governments have behaved brilliantly with those stimulus packages. So we're going to be back to normal far quicker
yes.
than we thought. And what we do need is a degree of financial change in the financial regulation side. There is a need for reform.
Absolutely. I mean, the clearest methodology for India, particularly as a handmaiden of democracy, is capitalism and free markets. I mean, I see that tragedy on a daily basis. The kids, you cannot reduce poverty, you cannot get education capacity up to handling 15 million people a year. You can't skill 6 million people a year unless you get free markets and democracy to work.
It is really a much more moral
yes.
answer, where people keep their self-respect, and therefore market-based solutions to poverty are really ultimately the most sustainable and the most moral ones. And that finally really is the dharma of capitalism.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks. I think we've run out of time, Manish. I'll wait till you become the largest employer in India.
Next year or the year after that?
And I hope that this example will show the country, the importance of labor reform. And when it happens, we'll have one of the persons to thank will be you.
Thank you.